we'll start with our quiz now. Here I'm following the structure of my own lecture. So we'll have some questions about the characters first, and then the setting, and then the theme. Okay. The first one, which should be the answer? The daughter, yes. In the beginning of this Act 1, we get to see talking the mother, the daughter, and the son, Freddie. And through the discussion, we get to know the mother's and the daughter's personalities a lot. And also a little bit of Freddie. And in Act 1, they are anonymous, except Freddie. But in Act 3, they'll reappear as Mrs. Ansel-Hill, and the daughter is Clara Ansel-Hill, and she will become important later. Okay, as a kind of foil to Eliza's transformation. Clara later will experience some transformation too. Number 2, which is the wrong answer? Yes, number 1. Okay, she is cute. This one is cute, but not according to the stage direction. And definitely, the flower girl is not romantic. And of course, you want to ask what romantic here means. I guess in that time, being romantic is being a lady, you know, ready to be pursued. So she's not romantic. She's a dirty flower girl, although she tries to be clean. Okay, and how about this one? Why does Mrs. Ansel-Hill care so much about the flower girls calling her son Freddie? Number 3, because she's worried that the son is connected with this girl. Later on, you will see that Mrs. Higgins in Act 3 is quite nice to Eliza. But then at that point, Eliza has been educated already. You know, in the late 19th century society, the lower classes are not supposed to mix with the upper classes. And I guess later on you'll get to know that the Ansel-Hills, they have their own positions, kind of precarious, in danger, you know, because they are going downhill. So she is especially concerned that her son is in good reputation. Okay, so it should be number 3. So why is the girl afraid of the note-takers taking notes about her? Because again, it's to do with class boundaries. You know, she's afraid that she's not supposed to speak to the gentleman. Okay, so that's the first reason. And then because these are the words taken down by the note-taker, so she saw that he didn't like her calling him captain. You know, captain being a kind of casual, familiar term. Okay, and then later on, the note-taker, who is Mr. Higgins, he is a phonetician, so he's able to tell a person's origin from their accent. So he knows that she's from Listen Grove. And then she cries and said that, she's taken note of because she leaves Listen Grove. So this one is not right. She said that she has a right to sell flower because she keeps off the curb. Okay, but keeping off the curb, it means that she doesn't get in the way of the traffic, which sometimes hookers do. Hookers, prostitutes do. And if you listen to Brother Coss's lecture, he pointed out that the prostitution is a very serious problem in the Victorian society. Later on, you'll get to know more about Victorian society, which is a little bit, very contradictory. You know, this society emphasizes a lot about morality, earnesty, etc. But then underneath it, there is the other Victorians, you know, who go for prostitution, you know, who are interested in satisfying their sexual desires in some hidden ways. Okay, so prostitution was actually very popular then, and it was a serious social problem. Okay, so she sees herself as a good girl. So she does not want to mix herself with a prostitute. So number 2 is wrong. Here I'm asking you to tell the differences between Higgins, which is a note-taker, and the gentleman who is Pickering, there are different responses to the flower girl. And their differences and their similarities will be very important throughout the whole play, because both of them are scientists. And Eliza basically undergoes transformation or education under their hands. Okay, so the note takers, which is Higgins, is quite dismissive and condescending. He calls the girl several negative names. Okay, like squash, cabbage leaf. So this is correct. And then the Pickering, on the other hand, speaks for the girl. At first, he doesn't. The two of them don't know each other. So Pickering also saw that the note taker is a detective from the police station. So he says, I give her 3 halfpence, and but it's nothing wrong. The girl means no harm, and I lay no charge against her. Okay, so that's what Pickering says for Eliza. And then the note taker, indeed, this is an important issue about language, and that is in that time how you speak, determines your social position. I think it is still a little bit true today, although different accents get to be more appreciated today. But maybe in the business world, sometimes your accents, like if you speak in Taiwanese English, sometimes can still determine your positions and influence your promotion, etc. Okay, so but then here Higgins makes a very strong judgment and said that this girl with her curbstone English, which is Cockney English, will keep her in a gutter forever. Will keep her poor, gutter ingo forever. Okay, and the gentleman is willing to buy flowers from the girl. No, because he doesn't have change. He only have £1 sovereign in his pocket, and the girl cannot give changes to sovereign. Okay, 1 sovereign is about 20 shillings. And 20 shilling is 1 shilling is like 12 pence. So the girls sell flowers only for 1 flower for 2 pence. So it's impossible for her to get so much money to give the gentleman changes. Okay, so number 4 is wrong. Signs of class distinction. This one, being called Freddie and Charlie, does not suggest their class background. Anybody can be called Judy, Freddie, Charlie. Okay. I guess this is a little bit similar to the way we call each other on the street. Sometimes we'll call 阿姨, 伯伯, etc. So that's a Chinese way of addressing people whom we are not familiar with, or whom we are familiar with, with the same term, 小妹妹, etc. Okay, but in Eliza's society, they can just give, a common name to the strangers they address. Language and accent, dress and boots, or the way one whistles, they can all be signs of one's class background. I want to make some special points about setting, because usually the stage directions are the parts which are less interesting. Maybe sometimes in your first reading you want to skip them, but make sure that you go back to them and read them closely. For instance, the beginning of Act 2 and Act 3 both have a long stage direction. In Act 2 is about Higgins' room. Act 3 is about Mrs. Higgins' room. And they are both very important. They reflect the owner's personality. So that's something you need to read really, really closely. Okay. So here I'm asking you. Here I'm asking you about the Act 1, its function, and especially the settings function. The church in the market, St. Paul's Church, which is in the Covent Garden vegetable market. Okay, so the first 3 are correct. Okay, it's a place, because it's a meeting place of a market and a church, and the theater is nearby. Because I think the Covent Garden is also the name of an opera house. if you check online, Covent Garden is also a place for an opera house. So it's a place which has different functions. And of course, people of different classes will gather here. Okay, so number 3 is correct. And number 2 is what I pointed out in my lecture. It joins the east and the west areas of London. Covent Garden is like on the edge of the east side. No, the west side. The west side of London. Okay. And then, yes, because the church is symbolic of equality, human equality, but then the market, there are market values. Market values are usually determined in terms of the money the commodities represent or the persons have. Okay, so money is everything in the market. Okay, so here is a contradiction which will go through the whole play. Higgins' idea of human equality, but then Eliza's need to be faced with the issue of money. Okay. Yes, this is about the description of the 2 rooms. You have Eliza's description of Eliza's small room at the end of Act 1, and then Higgins' room, laboratory, at the beginning of Act 2. Okay, so number 1 is right. Higgins has on his piano some fruits and then some chocolates. Okay, and later on he seduces Eliza with chocolates. He even throws chocolates into her mouth to stop her from talking. Okay, so all of that shows that Higgins likes sweets. He believes that sweets is something which can be tempting. Okay. This is wrong. Eliza has a bird in her as a pet. She has a bird cage. And I didn't check the My Fair Lady version, but in the film version of Pygmalion, Eliza has a bird. Okay, so that's why I want to check with you. Check to see if you do read the play. You shouldn't just be watching the film and believe that you've read it. Okay, yeah. All the 3 texts are different. Okay, so Eliza doesn't in our play. Eliza doesn't have a bird. Okay. Yes, Higgins has a lot of equipment reflecting his interest in science, and Eliza. This is a clue to her later development, because in Act 2 she is the one to go to Higgins, to want to be changed, to want to be educated. Okay, just because Higgins in Act 1 boasts that he can turn her into the Queen of Sheba in 3 months, and that's why she wanted change. And it shows that from the room that Eliza has the desire. She has 2 pictures. One is this fashion play, and the other is a picture of an actress. Okay, so I think both shows that she has a desire for being part of the fashionable world. Okay, so yes, number 2 is wrong. The significant sound effects in Act 1. This could be a little bit confusing because number 2 might seem to be right, but it is wrong. You really need to understand Higgins' personality to know that when he throws money at Eliza, it's not really being sympathetic, because later on he's all the same crude, similarly crude and rude to Eliza. Here he's being playful, making use of the church clock to suggest that one should have conscience and one should give money, but he doesn't really care that much about the money he has or what the money means for Eliza, and he doesn't care about her dignity at this point. Okay, the right answer is number 1. When Freddie bumps into Eliza, it is accompaniment of lightning and thunder. Okay, and I think that's a really suggestive element in Act 1, showing us that this is a clash of the 2 classes, which again will be the main theme in the whole play. And later on, you will find out that Eliza does get closer to Freddie. Right. Number 3 and number 4 I just made up. It's just not in the play. You know, you shouldn't think that, oh, the church clock usually reminds us of our mortality, or the rain usually is gloomy, and then you choose it. You know, then that shouldn't be right. Okay. So the answer should be number 1. Yes. Basically, I think if you have read the first part of Act 2, you'll know it. As I said last time, Shore's plays are mostly discussion plays, or the so-called idea plays. What is great about his plays is that the language is all very refined, and the discussions are all very interesting. If you have the patience to read through the discussion, sometimes you'll find out that each person involved in the discussion have their own desire, have their own ideas, and they are usually in conflict with one another. And then, you know, it could be a tug of war, you know, 拉锯战, or it could be, you know, a kind of battle of will, you know, that, you know, each of them have their own interests, and then they are in conflict with one another. Okay, so I think that's really something very interesting about Pygmalion. And the beginning of Act 2, you have one sample of it. Later on, you have more. And here it is, Eliza's going to Higgins to try to get educated. But Higgins at first is not interested. The whole pattern of the discussion I have explained in my lecture. And I even draw 2 charts for you to try to understand the back and forth of their ideas and who is taking the initiative, etc., etc. So make sure that if you want to know more, you'll go to look at the PowerPoint or listen to the lecture. And here, indeed, Eliza offers, I think, 2 shillings, 2 shillings for a lesson. And then he can calculate and said that, oh, very likely she earns 5 shillings a day. And so 2 shillings means 2/5 of her daily income, which is a lot she's willing to offer to get educated. So, and this is where Higgins start to be interested in Eliza. And then the turning point, of course, is Pickering's placing a bet with Higgins. Okay, but one thing very interesting is that throughout the discussion, Eliza is pretty much confused, you know, shocked, because several of Higgins' expressions she couldn't understand. She just couldn't understand, because here Higgins does an analogy and say that, oh, 2 shillings for a flower girl is equal to 60 pounds for a millionaire. Okay, and he's making this analogy. But then Eliza is so shocked and said, no, I don't have 60 pounds, etc. Okay, so that's one example of how sometimes Higgins' expressions are way beyond Eliza's comprehension. And this is something you need to remember, because in Act 4 and 5, both, there are discussions of between Eliza and Higgins, and it will show how Eliza has improved in her thinking, so that she becomes an equal to Higgins intellectually. Okay. So when Higgins is over impetuous, when Higgins after the idea of the bet, you know, he even just said, "Oh, Mrs. Pierce, bundle her off and take off her clothes and put on her some proper clothes. And if the proper clothes are not there, then, you know, wrap her with papers." Okay. So, you know, he's very inconsiderate, and he violates the sense of decency of Eliza's, and that's the point where Eliza is really shocked, and she wants to leave. And then Mrs. Pierce and Pickering, they become the balancing forces. You know, when Higgins is all impetuous moving forward, then Mrs. Pierce and Pickering ask him to be reasonable, to explain clearly, to use the terms understandable to Eliza. And then Mrs. Pierce, also later on Mrs. Higgins, the 2 women who are more sensible to women's positions. So both of them ask, what position Eliza is taking in the household. Is she a servant or is she just a student, etc., etc.? And also later, both Mrs. Pierce and Mrs. Higgins ask, what is to become of her? What will she do after she gets educated? Higgins just said, oh, we'll just throw her out. After we're done, she's got the advantages, and then she can just try to earn her own living. So he doesn't care about the possible consequences that will happen to Eliza after the transformation. Okay, so number 1 is right. Number 2, number 3, number 4 is wrong. Number 4 is wrong because Higgins is not always rude. With Mrs. Pierce and Pickering's urging, he at one point becomes seductive, at another point slow down to explain it in terms understandable to Eliza. Okay, so the whole piece of discussion is really interesting in that way. You get to see how Eliza is always always lacks comprehension, but then Higgins, on the other hand, is changing his positions, attacking her from different positions.